There are many different ship types in the game, and in this video we are going to take a look at the main ships, not really covering space fauna, maybe in another video. I will also give my recommendations on what to put in each slot. However, I won't go into stats or mechanics or reasoning behind recommendations, because if I did, this video would take longer than 10 minutes. If you have an opinion or there's something I didn't put in here, by all means comment. This is just a basic rundown, so let's do this. So first we have corvettes. Corvettes have a single section slot. The choices are picket and interceptor. I recommend using the interceptor section. The interceptor section has 3 small weapon slots. I recommend using disruptors or missiles. You have an auxiliary slot and 3 small defense slots. I recommend afterburners, 1 shield, and 2 armor. Combat computers are swarm for disruptors and picket for missiles. I recommend building corvettes early game, but switching to a larger, more powerful class later on. Next, we have destroyers. You want to start building them as soon as you research them, and research as soon as it pops up. Destroyers have 2 section slots. The first section has 3 choices: gunship, picket ship, and artillery bows. I recommend using the gunship bow. The second section has 3 choices as well: picket, interceptor, and gunship stern. If you're going missiles, it's tough, but I recommend the gunship stern or interceptor. I recommend swarmer missiles, regular missiles or disruptors, afterburners, 1 shield, and 5 armor. I recommend picket computer if you're going disruptors, artillery if you're using missiles. Like corvettes, I recommend moving on to cruisers and battleships as soon as you can. Though destroyers can often be paired with larger ship types, frigates are pretty straightforward. They are basically corvettes that can use torpedoes. There's only 1 section you can pick. I recommend 1 disruptor in the small slot, 1 shield, 3 armor, afterburners. I recommend the torpedo combat computer and close-range torpedoes like Space Torpedo or Devastator Torpedo. I recommend cruisers instead of frigates if you are going to use torpedoes. Next is cruisers. Cruisers have 3 sections. The first section has 3 choices: broadside, artillery, and torpedo bows. I recommend broadside if you're going missiles, torpedo bow if you're going disruptor or torpedoes. The second section has 4 choices: hangar, artillery, broadside, and torpedo core. I recommend broadside core if you're going missiles or disruptors. Torpedo if you're strictly using torpedoes. The last section has 2 choices. I recommend the gunship stern. I recommend using afterburners, 2 shields, 6 armor, and either torpedo or artillery computer. I recommend using 1 torpedo slot if you're doing disruptors, to take down battleships later in the game. Speaking of battleships, they have 3 sections as well. First section has 4 choices. I recommend taking the spinal mount bow with tachyon lance. I recommend artillery core most of the time unless you want to use missiles and or don't have kinetic artillery. In that case, use the hangar core. For the last section, I recommend using artillery stern for kinetic artillery. Broadside if you don't have kinetic artillery and are using missiles. For defense platforms, they have 2 sections. I recommend the medium station section for both. I recommend swarmer missiles, 1 shield, 2 armor, and reactive armor. Titan sections are fixed, meaning you only have 1 choice per section. The T slot is your choice. I recommend kinetic artillery for weapons, 2 shields and 10 armor. I recommend reactive armor, subspace snare especially if you have disruptors, inspiring presence or targeting grid, requires the Apocalypse DLC. Pick the artillery combat computer. Next is the Juggernaut, 4 shields and 17 armor, 2 tachyon lances, swarmer missiles, and strike craft. ECM, target acquisition, or strike command. That's what I recommend. Requires the Federation's DLC. Ion cannon is pretty fixed. Use 1 shield and the rest armor. Then reactive armor. Requires the Apocalypse DLC. The Colossus doesn't attack fleets, so the weapon you use to kill planets is entirely up to you. I'm not going to go over all of them. I recommend, as always, using more armor than shields. Requires the Apocalypse DLC. There is the Star Eater if you become the Crisis. It can attack ships. I recommend using kinetic artillery in the L slots, swarmer missiles in the M slots, and regular and S slots. Point defense and strike craft, of course, 4 shields and 16 armor. artillery computer, and reactive armor. Requires the Nemesis DLC. Progenitor Hivemind has offspring ships and they are no different from their counterparts, so no changes are necessary. A lot of this stuff is really how you want to play. Again, these are recommendations. I encourage you to experiment with these designs. Fleet composition is up to you. I may do a video on that in the future, but for now, that's the majority of the ships you can play with. That being said, I recommend missile or disruptor cruisers if you are lost and don't know what to do. I hope that was informative, short and sweet. If you like my stuff, you know what to do. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.